All right, we're being live streamed now at 8:07 p.m. Eastern time. That means we got to go over a little while, but that's fine. We started late, so hey guys, March 5th, 2023. FDI and Jipaiza. Hey. My question to our guys here was when Moon Lambo, and I'm going to use that as my tweet actually. TA report is live with Nick and GP. So that was my question, when Moon Lambo, and GP was like, I don't know. I don't like Lambos, which is fine, whatever. But I kind of threw the guys off with a comment of mine saying that I think we might be in for a lost decade. And that kind of provoked some fighting words, maybe, because Nick said we were going to fight. And then he's like, what'd you say, Nick? What'd you say after you said we were going to fight?
I said that I might agree. I might agree depending on your kind of outlook, I guess. I don't know.
What?
Okay, so I still think that we head higher this decade. I think that, let's just say that like SPY 1000 was a magnet. I would draw fibs from the like 90s, like the whatever, the 2000 highs, and then we had like what the 07 highs. We had like a big kind of range, and so like I'm drawing fibs from basically like from that breakout to 1,000. And then you have
10,000 or 1,000.
I'm sorry, 10. Yeah. I'm talking at SPY.
10,000, right? 1,000
Sure.
is back to 09 lows.
I'm talking about SPY.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So a 50% correction from that run would be healthy behavior. Like I ultimately don't think we're like, again, looking at the SPY, like I don't think we're rolling back over to 150 to retest that range break. But let's just say we run to 1,000, like we would be due for a large correction, like a large correction, and a 50% correction in any like long-term trend is perfectly healthy. So to say that like 8 years from now, we're going to be flat, we're basically at we're sitting at 400 right now. I'm sorry, like 500, like 100 points from now is not really that far off.
Significant.
Like I would, yeah, to me, like I think do I think we're going to be sub 500? No, I don't. I think that for some reason, I think that will be kind of a floor in a rollover, a pull in, or whatever you want to call it. And then a new range will be created.
So reach around. I mean, sorry.
Sure. Because you know that long term, the indexes are always going to continue higher. So it's like, it's just how are they going to do that? You're saying like we're going to be flat 8-10 years from now. Well, yeah, sure, but
you're going to miss the 100% plus run in the middle.
Exactly. That's all I was saying. So like I was looking at the chart.
Am I going to miss that? Did I say I was going to miss that?
Not you. Use the rhetorical.
Okay. All right.
Sure. So
because what I was saying was we can still go. I was doing it with my finger across the screen here, right? Like we can indefinitely do like something like where's my little tool here? We can forever do something like this, right? And there's some big gaps and some big dips, and then 8 years later, right? Like you're still right there.
So you think we're in for a decade of straight sideways chop?
Maybe.
I'm not in that camp.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, that doesn't mean we can't have extreme peaks and extreme dips, though, Nick. I mean, I was
Sure.
just being funny with the, like, I mean, we could absolutely do this. And where are we at? We're right back to where we were, right? Like that's
Yeah.
So if you go back from the COVID highs, you're barely above the COVID highs in that scenario in 2024.
Are you looking at the 70s charts? Because that's what it seems like you're looking at.
Maybe.
Basically a broadening formation
Maybe.
that breaks up. I think I hear you. I think we've talked about this before. The Amazon chart I shared back in May 2021 is there any more peak? What else do you need for Amazon to ever get that growth that it got in 2020? That was pull forward pandemic demand. That was infinite QE. When will it ever go back? If it will ever go back? And my answer is I don't think Amazon will ever go back to those levels of growth at the size that it's at, right? It's just the law of large numbers. So if you're looking at Amazon to be the new winner, only if they pivot like Microsoft did after 14 years, it's possible. They come up with a new industry and that's where they start making their next leg higher. But as of now, I don't see it in the old leaders. Chart wise, my personal opinion is we didn't start a new bull market till we took out 2000 and 2008 highs, right? So that's around 15. What's that?
I agree.
Right. So just so I got the 1968 to 1980 chart up here, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's some pretty big moves in there, but if you look from start to finish, like, yeah, you're up a little bit, flattish, right?
Yeah.
And wasn't that a high inflationary time?
It was. And more than double our inflation levels.
Right now, right? No, so I'm not. We
also had the oil embargo and all that. We had the prohibition era.
We got a war in Ukraine.
It was a fucking clusterfuck, right? Like, sorry, pardon the French, but that decade, and you're comparing to this decade, I think there's similarities, but there's a lot of difference.
There's a lot of difference, but right, if we're like right here, let's say we're like 1970-ish, right? Let's just say, I mean, it looks pretty damn good for bulls for the next 2 years, doesn't it? And a lot of things can happen in 2 years' time, can it not?
Yeah. It all depends on what you think of inflation. You think it's secular, or if it's supply side temporary.
If I think it's sticky, or if I think it's stagflation.
Yeah, I think that's so. When I'm looking at charts, right, and I try to put a narrative together based on what I'm seeing in the charts, is that we're basically back slightly above the 2020 pre-COVID disaster, right?
Yep.
And so 2020 QE, COVID, pull forward demand, and we never based in that area, right? We had this nasty move lower and then a spit roast higher, and we are now basing in that area here, right? It's a retest of a breakout, essentially. And in the process of this retest of this breakout, you are having this base that's forming, right? We've been at this level since May. Like all you people who've been talking about new lows, you've been wrong for 9 months, right? Like, yes, maybe stocks have, but individually, the indices have literally gone sideways. To up to down, testing supply zones on the downside and testing supply zones on the upside, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're basing here. We could base here for, and that's the question: how much pull forward demand do we have from the pandemic, and what's the base look like? Was it 5 years? Was it 2 years? Was it 20 years? Was it 10 years? And that's what we're going to figure out. And a lot of people think that the Fed is going to break something, and that's possible. The Fed is going to break, but you saw the comments today from Daily. Basically, everything that's shown higher inflation, they're talking to business leaders, and they're not. They're seeing differences in the inflation that's being reported versus what they're experiencing. So that was interesting to see as well. But I think I lost my train of thought, so I'll stop there. I used to be in the camp that we're going to go sideways for 10 to 15 years, right? And
Yeah, you were in that camp, weren't you?
yes, I was. And the more I look at these charts, I'm in the camp that we're going to, and 8 years from now, we might be right back to 400 or 500. I'm not saying that we can't come back here. I personally think we're in a really nice consolidation phase after not having that consolidation phase in 2020, and we're going to push up higher. There's so many good things. Like, there's bad things too, like all the macro. I'm not arguing any of that stuff, but I think there's a lot of money in the system. We might have a loss of liquidity, but I'd be curious to see what other people think. But once again, I think the bull market started in 2000. I posted this chart a couple of months ago, or maybe about a month ago, when it took out October 2008 and 2000 highs. That was 2013, right? And then after we took it out, we spent the next 2 years. If you remember, 2015 to 2016, we just went sideways.
Yeah.
So after a breakout, we went sideways, and then we had the big move higher. So let's call this the first kind of stage, or the second stage of the bull market rally. Then we have a lot higher to go.
God, I wish I had a journal from 15, 16. I would have loved to have gone back and read those posts.
And so you can't, I remember 2015, 2016, because I was very frustrated as a trader, right?
Yeah.
I was, I've learned a lot since then. So
God, I know.
yeah. But at that time, I was super frustrated. I'm like, oh, well, it's technically about to break out. Why didn't it break out? It's like, oh, because we're in a chop period, right? Because I couldn't see past the 5-minute chart or the 20-minute chart or whatever you want to call it. So I started looking big picture after that time frame, because I wanted to see what our future looks like, right, so to speak. And obviously the future is up for grabs, but it's something to kind of think about and kind of go through. So to me, 2000, when was it? When did we break out? Was it 2015?
From
2013, right? 2013 is we broke out.
February.
Yeah.
March. Yeah.
So, and then we kind of went sideways for 2 years after that, right? So the big breakout after a double top, and then you go sideways for a couple of years. And then we finally started moving higher. And yes, we've had a pretty decent move in that time. And if you're looking at this from like, if like the breakout from anyway, doesn't matter. I'll stop talking. I've been talking a lot. So that's why I'm thinking more along the lines that you're looking at a bigger move here out of this. And like the one thing that I've noticed, and I think Cookie talks about this quite often, is the 9-month moving average, right? And looking at the SPX, also the composite. I went back to 1930 on the SPX. In any of these big downtrends, I've never seen back-to-back months of holding the 9-month moving average in the continuation of that downtrend, right? It usually has 2 to 5 months, if not longer, to move higher.
Isn't it interesting to just talk about? I just like thinking about the different scenarios that we've all presented.
For sure.
I'm not necessarily saying I'm buying that we're in for a lost decade. I took that from Short Seller actually over at Charts for Charity. He spoke about the potential of that a couple times in our Slack room. But I don't rule it out. You guys know how I've been processing and thinking of things for the past, I don't know, 6 months or so. Like I've been very, it's like I live in Missouri. You got to show me. I live in the show me state, right? Like you gotta prove that you're going to do one thing or the other. And yeah, I like that. If we go back to the futures for a minute, I like that we've finally gotten what looks like some legs under the market here. But the way I look at last week where we had such low energy, right, that was undercut all the moving averages, retesting the downtrend line. I don't look at it terribly different than I look at this past week where we jumped up above the moving averages. Now it can juke you and fake you one way or the other. Now I've got to say, I think based on this last move that higher seems to be more probable than lower, because usually that first move is a false move, right? And if it doesn't have continuation or follow through and reverses, the reversal is what typically becomes the stronger move. So I'm not saying that we don't go higher from here. This is kind of what we've all been waiting for, but we're not drastically different from 1 week to the next in my mind of where we've been. So I'm kind of the wait and see still. I'm not going to sit on my hands. I haven't sat on my hands for a couple months now. So I'm going to keep trying to pick off some things and trade some things and add some things I like. But at the same time, this guy decides to go south, I'm not going to wait to cut some things or go short or buy some puts. And if things go higher from here, like this is a good point to buy. Would I like to had 2.5% back? Sure, but I'm not gonna lose it over not hitting 2.5% off 1 week's move. You know what I mean? Am I too rational?
No, so like the conversation the short seller is having is one I've been having for a couple of years in terms of, are we going to go sideways, and are you
right?
I think it's prepared, not with too many people, but with my own head and my own thought process, is that, are you prepared to invest in yourself versus the market over the next 5 to 10 years, right? In preparation for the bigger breakout 10 years from now. And as I've been looking at charts over the last couple of weeks, I can make the argument for that we're still like at the midway point of the bull market, right? And
I don't think, dude, when a trend, I don't think trends. When you look at a chart of like the SPY on a monthly time frame, like I see freight train. Like, and all we've done is like channel slowly for the last 2 years, basically sideways. Like, if that's not like I don't know. I guess I don't imagine that to be a wildly trend ending topping pattern.
I don't disagree with that, Nick.
So I think that the way that we've corrected in the last 2 years is definitely not what very many of us, I think. I don't know, if you would have asked anybody, nobody would have said, oh yeah, we're going to have a fucking horseshit market both directions with no fucking follow through. And, like, I don't think many people would have said that, but so we didn't get the market that we expected, but I do think we got what we needed and ultimately wanted. I think millennials like, I think this is the moment that millennials have been largely waiting for since like 2008, honestly.
No, those idiots are still waiting for
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying,
freaking 2200 or whatever, right? Like,
when you look at individual names that have been just absolutely annihilated, but they're all building kind of like, kind of I see a lot of cup and handle patterns. So like,
Where? Give me a name.
like RDFN, like Redfin, for instance. I mean, that's on like a daily time frame, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's been kind of moving sideways for the most part. It dipped lower, double bottomed out, and now it's just kind of wedged nicely right into like the 50 and 200 day.
Clearly. Yeah, we can see that.
but this,
I'm
Nick,
saying, like, in 2008, we got an opportunity to buy names at like a crazy discount, and we haven't seen this type of correction since then.
yeah,
I'm just
and
saying, yeah,
the crazy part was '08 was the brink of a global financial collapse, right?
for sure.
We're not even in a damn recession right now, right? Like,
I know.
and
Well,
you're
Well,
getting
whose definition of a recession,
yeah,
I guess.
we definitely are. It's just they're gonna come out one day and they're gonna be like, hey, the last 12 months we were in a recession, and everyone's gonna be like, oh yeah, we had no idea.
But we're not, right? Like, everyone kind of saw this coming from a mile away, right? In 2021, most companies, this is my thought process, right? Most companies curbed their spending, their travel, a lot of things, because they were worried about what the Fed was going to do when the rates went higher, right? And as a whole, I saw amongst my friend circles, but also on Twitter quite a lot, that people were pulling back on their spending, right? Like, this was 2021 in anticipation for the world's most famous recession that's not a recession, that is a recession that's not a recession, whatever you want to call it. But to me, it's probably one of, like, kind of the more fiscally responsible periods from a lot of companies. Redfin is probably not one of them, but
No, yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
No, and I mean, like, Redfin CEO. I watched a Netflix show with the Redfin CEO, and I was like, I never want to invest in this company. But that's a whole different conversation. There's a lot of stuff that's telling me that risk is going to be on in the near future, whenever that is. A lot of the intraday and daily movements are now dictated by like the zero DTE players and all that other stuff. So I'm stepping back from more of the intraday moves to look at the kind of the big picture stuff here. On weekly and monthly timeframes, and like, what are we doing on these timeframes? It's like, yeah, we're gyrating between these bullshit zones that people don't want to buy anymore. So the sellers come in, and zero DTE takes it right back down, then right back down to support, and they buy it right back up. And so we're in this zone until we have more clarity on what's going on. But we have talked about this chart, is like, take a look at CDW, right?
See what?
CDW. They're corporate spenders, right? This is where all the big firms go to buy a lot of their technology, a lot of like ancillary and peripheral devices, their office supplies, and this mofo is sitting near all-time highs, right? And
it looks like it wants to give some back now, though.
It may, and like, it's not sitting at all-time lows, though, right, Bags?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I'm saying, is it could be in a distribution pattern. I'm not arguing any of that stuff. I'm just saying that this is one of the ones that kind of talk about, like, they were one of the first ones to kind of collapse too, right? Like, make a high in 2021, right? So they were like, they already saw the pullback in spending that was coming from corporate. And now that the Fed hasn't broken anything as of date, and it's been 12 months plus now, and they haven't broken anything, I think companies start to slowly spend and bring back some of their initiatives, right? Now they can better assess what the market is doing, and that they can spend. It might be in selective zones, it might be in selective processes, but I think they have more clarity on how they can spend their money, right? And back in November 2021, when J Powell pretty much said higher for longer, it's been 15 months since that happened, and nothing has broken. Potentially, it could.
15 months. Wow.
It was the day of Thanksgiving in 2021. Right? So, or the day after Thanksgiving, whatever it was. So to me, I think this is solid consolidation. And for us to have that next leg lower, there has to be that something that breaks that no one is expecting, right? Like I'm talking about something that's going to be like, holy crap, you'll see it, it'll be flat out. It's not going to be, hey guys, we got inflation higher. Oh, yes, we've had high inflation since November 2021. That's not what's going to break the markets here, right? That's my opinion. So we've talked about this many times. Every 30-40% correction looks like it's going to be the big one. The question is, does it become the big one without a catalyst? And we don't have a catalyst at this moment, and I don't see one that's prominent to me. And I'm not going to see it. It's going to be something that I'm never expecting.
CDW. Sorry, I've just been staring at this chart. This is kind of in a very precarious spot. Just looking at it, I think. I mean, you've got this huge range box that when it's come into contact with the top, right, it's bounced back down to the bottom, and now you've had a rejection above the top. It's currently sitting below it. I mean,
it's a cup and handle on the weekly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it can be, and
it is.
how much further did it go after it broke out of the handle here?
It didn't. It's creating a handle, right? And it's holding the 9 SMA, so it can consolidate. I would say it has to hold above the 200 level, and it creates a decent handle there.
That's a cup and handle right there. I mean, if you want to count this as one, then it builds it out. That could be one too.
No, the breakout move is from the 2020 lows. If you go out, right, that's the big breakout move up higher, and then you've had this rounding consolidation pattern here, right? And now the handle's in the process of forming. Potentially, I don't know.
Potentially, yeah.
And I don't see any large distribution on the chart. I don't see anything that raises flags for me, right? Like one cup and handle that raised a lot of flags for me was Celsius Holdings, CELH.
Yeah.
It looked like it was going to fail because it was big distribution on volume at near the highs after a big move, and I'm like, that doesn't seem very bullish, right?
We must have talked about this before. I've got something charted on the RSI. Anyway, so GP, what do you like that's not named Netflix?
I don't like Netflix actually, but
what?
Yeah,
now you have to talk about Netflix.
It looks terrible, right? Like it's the MACD on the weeklies. Like
there's your long entry on Netflix right there.
I mean, yeah. it's resting on the weekly 20.
Probably, right? Every time I give up on Netflix, it has like a 20% move higher. So
that's all I was saying. I was like, oh, if you're over it, who knows? Maybe there it is.
So I'm in shares like in the low 200s, right? So I'm not over it. It's going to be a hold for me.
Yeah, you're not selling it because it might lose 10% here.
I posted the chart in Charts for Charity on like the fundamentals of Netflix, right? It's literally almost at 2021 EPS and almost 10% higher on revenue forecasted for 2023. And we're sitting at whatever 315, which is a level that we hit in 2017, 16, whatever. So it's a transition from a growth stock to a mature stock. I like it for the long term. They have
so you're saying bags don't enter here is what you're telling me. Like
if it holds here, there's a confluence of support.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
If it holds here, right, like you have the 21 SMA on the weekly, you have the COVID 2020 lows. This is when QE was announced, where it took off. Is this area as well? It rejected the January 22 low, the first big move down at 379.99 was the low of that candle in January. It basically rejected that, came back here doing a 50% retrace of the October earnings breakout from the base. There's a lot of things that I like here. But what raised flags for me was the Friday move, right? Friday's move in Netflix is something in the past that would have broken out, right? Like it would have been the one leading the market higher, and it didn't. So it's starting to show that it's decoupled from some of the indices, and you can see that typically after like a 10-12 day move down, straight down, right? It's gone straight down. It has these bounces, and Friday you would have expected where everything was moving. Look at Meta, look at all these names that had 5-8% moves in the mega caps. Netflix is like, nah, chill, bro, I'm good. So yes, it's possible that it bounces here, but if it doesn't bounce here,
for sure,
it's got
it's pretty cut and dry, right? Like either it bounces or it's dead.
Yeah,
it's dead to me. Yeah,
dead means Netflix will have another 20% move down and then have 100% move higher because it is a piece of crap trader. But from a long-term perspective, I still think it's I think it's a good stock to own.
All right, but I'm going to YOLO some weeklies then. There you go.
Yeah. So you were asking what I do.
Yes, I asked what you liked and we got on Netflix.
I like Coin.
Interesting. Yeah.
The weekly looks phenomenal to me.
Looks pretty good. Ain't gonna lie.
Yeah. Not gonna lie. This is the same pattern that's showing up in a lot of different names. Like
everywhere.
Pull that down to the daily. Like the daily, it's gonna should look like a exactly.
Tried to break out in earnings, came right back down, tested, shook everyone out, and then is going higher. Yeah. But on a day where Bitcoin collapsed the night before, Coin did not, and that's a first in a long time.
What Bitcoin? I didn't look at Bitcoin.
Well, Binance was in the Wall Street Journal news earlier today. Don't want to get too caught up in news as opposed to talking about charts and what we like and don't like, but Binance, according to the Wall Street Journal, text from crypto giant Binance reveal plan to elude U.S. authorities. So we know that the U.S. wants to rein in crypto to some degree, or regulate. I guess they're the same thing, depending on how you want to use them. But we talked about Binance I don't know, it's been months ago now, I guess, when crypto was really shitting. It was after the FTX
November.
Yeah. So I'm not saying Binance is going down the shitter, but Binance moves a lot of money in the crypto space, and that could be worth watching. That could be some fireworks one way or the other. And Coinbase is obviously trying to do what they can to stay with the regulators, but the chart looks good. So I I kind of like it for trade. I think it's doing what it's what you'd want it to do if you're a bull.
I think Bitcoin looks amazing,
Do you, Nicholas?
especially on the weekly, actually. I mean, it just looks like a big descending wedge.
A big descending wedge on the weekly.
Yeah, so I basically connected the lows from like June 21, June 22, and then kind of like November 2022. And then the high would be kind of your November 2021, March 2022. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I could say it already broke out of it, right? Or
Yeah,
is that what
totally.
you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it looks great. Moving averages are starting to cross. A lot of times in these descending wedges too, like I've noticed that it's not uncommon for the low to be tested and it to kind of end up double bottoming out of this.
Yep.
Just something that I've seen, but I think Bitcoin looks really good.
And this is coming from one who is not a big crypto person. Nick,
Oh yeah, for sure.
Thinks it's all snake oil anyway. So he likes it. He likes it here. I'll say what I said. Was it last week? Printed a monthly doji last month. So expect some fuckery. Our range, our range is clearly from 21 to 25. So, you break down below 21, you might need to clutch your pearls. You break out above 25. You might be clutching something else.
GP.
Yep.
What do you like better, hood or coin? Just charts. Just the chart.
Coin, no doubt.
Okay.
Hood is I don't know what it's doing.
Sure.
But
to me it looks like a not as strong version of the coin
fair
chart.
Okay.
Right. So we can flash them both up here.
Yeah.
See.
So here's the difference for me, Nick.
Yeah.
Is that Hood made a new low net last week, coined not. So
fair.
So to me, it's the stronger looking chart. Coin went right into the 9 SMA on the weekly, held literally almost to the penny, and then took off.
Price alone, coin is stronger. Like I'd rather trade a $60 stock than a $5 stock.
And
they're pretty similar though. The chart is pretty similar.
And look at the volume that's here, right? It's steadily increasing on the green here. So to me, coin, no doubt, is the better play. Which means you should probably buy Hood because that's what this market is.
Yeah, fair. What about AMD and
NVDA?
Yeah, your guys' favorites.
Man, so here, I'm gonna be honest. I'm in NVIDIA puts right now. Call me crazy. I am sometimes, but sometimes I have some genius fucking ideas. I think it's way overextended, and the RSI is really hot. So is the stochastics here, and it should be like price is just absolutely going up. But we are to a level that we could absolutely collapse here and see some negative divergence continue in NVIDIA. So I'm playing that out to see if that happens. It's a little bit of a hedge to my long position. So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm prepared either way, Nick. And if I look at the semiconductors as a whole, to me, that looks a little better because it's not so stretched, right? You've got this period of, not completely through the moon like NVIDIA is. And
like I think the SMH looks amazing.
Yeah, it looks good, right? But NVIDIA looks really hot right now, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it give a little back on something. AMD, again, I think similar to the SMH chart. Not too hot, not too cold. Keep the porridge just right and grind higher. At least that's how I'm playing it.
So I was long calls NVIDIA off that insane strength, off the massive offering. And then Friday I closed them out. I did not enter puts because ultimately it closed above the earnings high.
Yep, it did.
And so that's it. To me, it was a bullish chart, but the reason I didn't hold the longs, I mean the calls, because I actually think it's going to break out, but the weekly volume on NVIDIA just wasn't there to suggest the move can continue higher for me. So that was enough in this market that if you're in short-term weeklies, I don't want to take the chance, right? So yeah. I got out, but so I'll get back in if it confirms higher on Monday and rips higher.
And I'm a month out on my puts that I bought, so I've got time. Not that I plan on sitting in them for a month, but I got the 220s into the March, which it could pull into 220. But I'm not holding a monthly, I shouldn't call it a monthly, an end of month March 31st put to hold it the entire expiry. I'm just holding it so Theta doesn't eat me alive.
Yeah, and so like already 3 days into the month, we've already pushed past the prior month's high. So there's a lot of things that says it's going to continue higher. I just didn't feel
it could.
Yeah,
it could.
And you don't typically see that. You don't typically see that in bearish moves, right? And the extension for me, the 161 extension here ends around 270. So I can see that being the area where it starts to find solid resistance.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's a bearish move, right? I'm just saying it's more of a reversion to the mean. Because it is so stretched, and that's what's really paid off for me in my options trade as of late. I've been playing a lot of reversion to the mean. You get a big move one way, I'm going to bet the other way, and
that's the market right now, right?
People and that's been really successful. And you do what you keep doing it until it doesn't work anymore, right? And right now it's working.
But that's exactly my point with NVIDIA. NVIDIA showed you it wasn't working here, right? If you were talking about NVIDIA after the offering, everyone and their mother would have expected that gap to fill off of earnings, right? And what did it do off the earnings? It did not even come close to getting filled. So if you look at Roblox, if you look at Roku, if you look at every earnings move, it has gone back and filled the entire move.
Well, let's not speak in the same language of Roblox and Roku as NVIDIA.
Look at all the earnings, though, right? I'm not just talking about these are the two names that came to mind, right? But most earnings gave back the entire move, right? So,
look,
Netflix gave back the entire earnings move. It's just long and process, but a lot of these names have given back their earnings move, and this on the back of a $10 billion offering, not some like $500 million offering, $10 billion. It's like half their revenue in a year, or a third of their revenue.
I hear you, and it did close above the prior closes, but it's still in line with these other high wicks. So again, like I'm not saying NVIDIA is going to zero. I'm not saying NVIDIA is going to close the gap. I'm just playing. Give me a 5% one way week, and I'm happy.
And
that can happen easily in NVIDIA.
Yeah, it can happen in the first hour tomorrow.
Absolutely. So we got a question, and one thing that I like, RP in the chat says shop and Google. GP, you've been our shop guy who's been talking about shop. You want
Apple looks better than
you want to talk about shop,
Google and Amazon.
Yeah, I'll talk about shop just before we move on from semiconductors in general. One name that people are probably not paying attention to because it's a small one is INDI.
That's a nice move.
It's a solid move.
That's a nice move.
Yeah. So just wanted to keep on your radars here that if we do start getting pullbacks in this name, this is where I can see bigger potential than in the names like NVIDIA and and AMD, because those are widely followed.
Yeah.
The ones that are the smaller ones tend to have bigger moves, like LSCC, right? Lattice Semiconductors. That under the radar has literally just gone bananas since the 2019 breakout, the base breakout. It's gone from $10 to 90, 80, something like that. So in terms of Shop going into earnings is notorious for just terrible reactions, right? Even in uptrends, it's just how it plays out. And we got the terrible reaction to honestly a pretty good earnings report based on recessions imminent and life on Earth is going to be hell. Shop earnings were pretty damn good, and it broke right back into the base, right? So you are now retesting the base that is formed over 2022. And so far, every test at that base level has been people stepping in and buying. So it's just something you have to keep an eye on. It's not one of the greater traders in terms of fluidity of motion, but like Nick, you've talked about this quite often. All these charts look the same. Tried to break out, rejected, back to the base, and are like, I think Shop starts to behave like Roblox. If you look at Roblox real quick, if daily, sorry. Big earnings breakout, came back and retested the base that it's formed over the last year and started to immediately move higher, right? After a few days of basing in that base. So Shop to me looks like this. So I like it. I don't know when, where, how, why, right? What was the other one?
Google.
Oh, that just looks miserable. That and Amazon just look terrible.
Yeah. Apple looks good though.
Apple does look good.
Well, better.
Well,
like
better.
Hasn't Apple gone sideways for like multiple
Better
weeks?
than Google.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I
I mean, what are we comparing here, right? Like it does look better than Google.
There you go. Apple, a great example of a big blue chip, popped on earnings, gave the whole move back, right? Back into the base, buyers showed up again, boom, starting to move higher, right? So Amazon, similar actually, in terms of price action, tried to move into earnings. Earnings weren't great. It got smoked out and back into the base that it's been building over the last couple of months, right? So
I'm not saying that I like Google more than I like a lot of other things, but I don't hate Google right here. I think with their AI kerfluffle, I think they're just one good showing away from completely reversing that fortune. And as long as Google is basing right here in this like low to mid 90s area, I still see that as constructive and potentially a trampoline higher at some point. So I don't hate it, but I wouldn't want to be just in weekly calls or puts on. Maybe I wouldn't want to be in weekly options on this, is I guess what I'm saying. And my stop out would be pretty well defined here.
So the concern for me, Google, is twofold. Is Google is one of the biggest accumulated mega cap stocks during this like down period, right? I think it had one of the highest institutional ads. So what lets it break higher if institutionals have already been adding at the lows? And then that volume off the Bard, I don't know why they named their AI Bard, but that should have been your first clue. That was pretty heavy volume. So
yeah, I don't disagree with you.
It could be the final washout volume that was needed in Google. All those institutions that have been buying nonstop over the last 12 months.
They just got another chance at it to add.
Or they said, you know what, this is not worth it, right? And they finally got out. Basically, stock market shakes out as many people as they can, including institutions, before things start to move higher.
I do kind of like Square Block. I don't hate SQ right here. I think as Nick's mentioned several times, similar pattern to what we've seen in some other names here. Maybe not as strong as like the coin setup, but very similar nonetheless. Picking up in volume the last 2 weeks, so you like to see that. I think it has room higher, so I kind of like Square right now.
Yeah, and so the other thing that we don't often talk about is, while we're seeing these in a lot of these tech stocks, what are we seeing in the names that have been pushing to highs over the last 12 to 18 months, right? Like energy, like healthcare, like defensives, and your
Marathon Petroleum all-time high, baby.
Are they in oil services? They are, aren't they?
Marathon Petroleum, that's just straight.
So I'm talking about OIH looks awesome. XLE does not. Right. So one's a producer, one's a services, and I think services is what leads the energy market higher, not producers.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my personal opinion, and everyone's loading the boat on XLE, and I think they're missing OIH.
Yeah, I would agree. Totally. God, it looks so good too.
It just on a long term.
Before you got on OIHGP, I was getting ready to say we've talked a whole hour and not even brought up energy or the XLE one time.
Drugs either.
We can't make a whole show.
No, because I think what for me that sticks out is 2021 was peak tech earnings, and 22 was the collapse of tech, right? And many names down 95%. XLE seems like peak earnings in 2022, and 2023 is the collapse of that sector. But I think that money is moving out of XLE and into OIH. That's why I talk about OIH.
Nick, you said and drugs. XBI still hanging out.
Yeah, I thought so. I was looking at the weekly chart of XBI, and like I should have expected a little bit more, a bigger problem, like in that kind of like those in the 90s. Just being that it has like XBI specifically has a trend line, if you're just connecting the highs, it didn't really roll that hard compared, considering that it butted up against that trend line. I guess, sure, we could still roll. So
XBI, the monthly, is what I think is what you need to focus on, because it's 7 straight months without making a new low, right?
Yeah,
even though it's crappy, even though it's consolidating, all that other stuff.
Positive divergence.
It's 7 straight months of not making any new lows on the monthly, which is usually a good sign that at some point XBI goes. I don't know when.
Positive divergences.
But we all know that once 95 gets taken out on XBI, it's game on, right? I think it's risk on. I think it's game on across the board. But that's if you're looking at other economic indicators, look at copper. And
X and CLF I thought looked pretty good.
Rio looks good. All this XME in general, the metals look fantastic. They look like, we should even talk about FSLR.
Yeah, not kidding.
Not even a black hole could stop FSLR at this point. Gee whiz. Just amazing move.
I know this is a stock chart, and XME is a ETF, but from a chart perspective, they look almost identical in terms of big base breakouts and then retests, right?
Who did you say which one? I'm sorry.
XME metals.
XME and FSLR.
Yeah. Right. So you had this base breakout, came back and retested the base breakout, and same thing with FSLR, right? It broke out from 60, hit 120, and came right back down to 60 or whatever the ranges are. And then FSLR has not looked back since.
Yeah, it's going ham, as the kids say, back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, so XME looks very similar to me. So I still think XME is just getting started here, and metals will continue to shine. No pun intended, or pun intended.
Interesting chart. We talk a lot about what we like. What don't we like? Nick, go.
I don't like utility companies because they have not lowered natural gas prices while natural gas has gotten destroyed. But sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I don't.
So no XLU for you.
Nope.
Yeah, it looks like a rollover to me.
I mean, I'm sure I could dig something up, but I don't.
I don't like CVS.
I'm not. Yeah, CVS.
All the former winners, man, one by one.
Yeah. What is Hum doing?
I don't like LMT.
Don't get me wrong. It's had a horrific few months here. And that doesn't mean that like it couldn't find support here and bounce, but it just looks like it looks bad.
Yep. I personally don't like LMT.
Lockheed Martin?
I don't. That's multiple times it's tried to break out and it rejects every time. I think this is distribution to me. Some people that I respect like the chart quite a lot and think it's consolidation or getting ready for the next leg higher. I personally think this to me looks like it's going to break down, but
I'm not crazy about it.
I think cat falls in that same category to me.
I think long or short there are better opportunities for my money.
Yep. Can we talk about the death of the dollar?
Sure, we can talk about old Dixie.
Am I the only one who thinks the Dixie's gonna die?
No, I mean, I think it's just butting up. I mean, it's just a retracement. That's all. Like it basically. I mean, I think it's heading mid-20s, 25.
UUP,
20.
you mean?
Oh, the UP. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. I both of these charts look exactly like Tech did in March of 2022 before the epic collapse. Obviously, there's a lot more macro.
And if that happens, yeah, we're gonna see some bullish equities if no Dixie dies. Hey Warren, good to see you, bud. He doesn't like Costco.
I have cost in my wife's account.
Yeah, not the best, not the best looker. It didn't. They had earnings last week too, right? Yep.
Which got bought up.
450 should be kind of your line in the sand.
Got bought up.
I think it's a tightening formation here. If it's making higher, I mean higher lows. It's consolidate. I would never bet against cost.
That's one of the best run companies in the entire S&P 500.
And they still have a lot of levers. I think, in my opinion, they haven't raised their membership prices. I think that's an automatic way to increase their revenue if they wanted to. I think they're one of the better prepared from a supply side manufacturing perspective. And they can always introduce a random special dividend that they've been known to do in the past.
They have. They've popped you with that a few times over the past few years.
Yeah. So I maybe it dies, maybe it doesn't. There's a decent amount of distribution, so that does concern me, and not enough accumulation. But
yeah, I see your diamond there. I mean, it could be like I got you.
I'd rather short Redfin. So not saying you should. I'm saying if you're thinking about company perspective.
Yeah, I don't trade Costco, and I look at it on occasion as we do. I can see the tightening pattern, but I also don't like. I mean, I've become more like Cookie over the past few years than ever before. When you lose those moving averages, I guess this is Duzio too. You ride your huckleberries and you don't ride the dingleberries, right? And right now it's riding the dingleberries.
Yep.
Just trying to make life as easy as possible. You know what I mean?
Yep, I agree.
That's why I've only been trading like 5 names. I think I mentioned this maybe last week or the week before. Tesla, NVDA, Apple, the Qs, and SPY have all been reversion trades for me lately. I mean, I know I took a shot at Baba and I won. I took a shot at Target and won. But for the most part, I'm just trading those 5 names, and there's enough volatility and liquidity and volume in those guys that it's pretty easy to, if you're betting the right direction, to trade it pretty successfully.
Yeah. You know what looks fairly good?
Tell me.
Peloton.
Oh, Peloton. So I buy a lot of crap off Woot. Woot.com. I love you, Woot. They're an Amazon company, but if you want to sponsor the podcast, Woot, love you. I saw Peloton on Woot the other day, and that doesn't doesn't ring great for me, but the chart looks okay. It looks almost like the coin chart.
Yep.
So many of these charts.
ROKU is similar. ROKU actually looks better than both those.
Roku.
Yeah, it's got a little. Well, I don't know. I'll call it a push between Roku and Peloton. I'll call it a push.
That's fine. You know what's disappointing? Etsy. It looks so good, and then it went.
Yeah, that doesn't look great. Warren,
casino names look great.
Baidu looking great. Baidu.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at Baidu, so let's look at the voodoo that you do, Baidu. That, I mean, it doesn't look bad.
Sideways, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a springboard from here.
Wait for the springboard though. Otherwise, it can just
Yeah.
sideways.
You're still in range, right? Like you're still in range, so you're not going yet, but it looks all right. Little volume's a little lower, but
take a look at Win. Monster.
God, what's
wow.
Casino names in general, fantastic. LVS.
What other ones we have?
LVS looks better, I think, than Win.
Yeah, MGM is always the laggard, it seems.
Oh, MGM looks surprisingly actually good.
Yeah, it doesn't look bad, but it's always the laggard of the bunch, it seems.
Yeah, totally.
But I guess this is what I'm talking about. If you're putting like all the parts of the system in a whole, in general, casinos are your discretionary spenders, right? And it's sitting there on the verge of breaking out.
Yeah, basically it's about ready to break a trend line. It started back in like 2014.
Yeah. So
how are we feeling about the Chinas in general?
Garbage price action, not worth the effort. For that 1 week where you might catch it, you might try for 32 weeks.
So one thing that was interesting to me, I use TKP Traders TRM. That's what I have on right here. It basically color codes the candles based on some moving averages. And when I look at the FXI, which is China large cap, I don't ever recall seeing this action. So a gray candle is basically a hold, a green is a buy, and a red is a sell. I have never seen an up week above a gray be a painted red candle. So that was wild to me to see that. So on one hand, I'm like, maybe I short it, but the other hand, I'm like, that was a pretty nice up week. So I'm going to watch that and just see what happens, because normally there's not such an indecision of a candle move like that. So it's really got me curious on why it did that. Anyway, that's
And
me.
China's in the middle of QE, so I think they eventually go. I just don't know when.
That's me being a little bit of a geek. Anyway, hey guys, we went 5 minutes extra. Hey, Warren, Wayne, my homie, it was great for you to stop by. Don't be a stranger. We appreciate you. Nick, thanks for talking 5 more minutes than you normally do. That was great. So it's not me and GP all the time. GP,
I talk a lot.
I'm gonna be watching Netflix. Like, no, I'm gonna really be watching Netflix, not the chart. See what I did there? But no, I'm gonna watch the chart too. But guys, we brought a little bit better energy today. I really appreciate it. I think we're all in a better place. And just maybe we all recharged for the weekend. Maybe, you know, having a nice big bullish end of week recharged us. I don't know, but tonight felt good. It felt like a good night, and I want to leave it on a high note. So appreciate you guys as always. It's hard to believe we've been doing this as long as we have together, but I kind of never know what we're going to get from each other sometimes. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the banner. Thanks.
Thank you.